Welcome to the southern uplands of Scotland, a land carved by ice, wind and centuries of human toil. Nested in the Leadhills lies two villages with a rich, gritty legacy, Wanlockhead and Leadhills. These are the highest villages in Scotland, and for hundreds of years they were at the heart of one of the country's most important industries, lead mining. This is the story of the blackened hands, the buried fortunes, and the community shaped by the rocks beneath their feet. The story begins with geology. The Leadhills were formed over 400 million years ago. Deep beneath the surface, veins of lead, silver, zinc wound their way through ancient rock. The lead here is gallium, a heavy silver grey ore. It was the Romans who first noticed it, but it was during the medieval and post-medieval periods that mining really took off. In the 13th century, monks from Newbattle Abbey mined lead from here, but the real boom came around the 17th century. By the 1600s, Wanlockhead and Leadhills became the hot spot for lead extraction. The Society of Mines Royal, and later the Scots Mining Company, oversaw large-scale operations. Wanlockhead alone produced hundreds of tons of lead each year. Mining was gruelling. Men had sometimes children worked by candlelight. Tools were primitive picks, hammers and gunpowder, were all they had to battle through the rock. The work was dangerous. Collapse, flooding and even lead poisoning were constant threats. But these people were resilient and skilled. The wealth extracted helped fuel Scotland's economy, and for time these quiet hills echoed with the sound of prosperity. Welcome to Wanlockhead. Today we're going to the Lead Mining Museum, and we're lucky enough to have Elliott, our guide, who's going to take us further on and through the history, which is going to be fascinating. Come with us and explore.
The first signs of mining are basically indicated by veins that appear on the side of the river, okay? Where the rock meets the riverbed, we see veins crossing that can have hematite, iron, it can have lead, it can have different composites. And miners look for this, and that indicates whether they follow the vein in. So the very early mining would have revolved around exposed veins on the river, okay? Now, the first indication of any mining that we have in Wanlockhead is in 1239, okay? Now it's likely that mining started earlier, but that's the first very early indication of lead mining here. And that was a group of monks from Newbattle Abbey, just near Dalkeith in Edinburgh. They were given a royal charter, a land grant to come and mine lead here in open cast pits and small, shallow surface workings, okay? That was for the lead roofing on their churches and to colour the lead glass, green coloured glass, and also for the windows as well, for the stained glass windows. It's a very important commodity for the church in the early days. We then fast forward, we get to the 15th and 16th centuries. Two Scottish kings, James IV and James V, are rather obsessed with gold. They like to rival the new powers in the Renaissance Europe, France, Germany, Italy, that have very, very good and very gaudy systems of very nice coinage. So that wants to be rivaled by James V, and he actually hires German miners who are the experts of their day in discovering gold and in actually sinking shafts and finding veins as well. So funnily enough, that comes out of the gold expeditions. Lead is found from finding gold. So we have 200 years of gold mining, and lead starts to be found, and they realise because there's massive veins of lead in this valley, that becomes the main commodity because it's more consistent than gold. Gold's very hard to find. So the product of all of the workings that you see today, that is the product of about 1620 through to about 1930. So we have a very early history of mining here, especially in lead as well. If you want to follow me, it's a little bit low when we first go in, but it should be fine. I'll just put that in. Just don't want that hitting you in the face.
Thank you.
Lovely. So yeah, it's just a little low here. It's going to open up about 10 feet in. Well, more than 10 feet, 20 feet actually. And as you can see, it really does open out. It's about, I don't know whether it's about 8 foot.
Oh, yeah.
So this is it. And it's surprisingly, it's quite temperate in here. It's not too bad. It's quite a nice atmosphere actually, as mines go, yeah. Can you all see this, if you want to just come up? This is a small band of galena here, okay? This is what we call the vein. This is the lode here. Now the lode is basically a filled crack in the earth, okay? We're on a fault at the moment, and in this fault there's a big fissure that's been smashed millions and millions of years ago. And what's happened is lots of different composite minerals in hot water have trickled down through here, and they've filled this gap in the earth with different minerals, okay? Lead being this one here, and that's what's of interest to the miners, okay? Now, you might ask yourself, why have the miners left this piece of galena in, okay? Now, this is a little bit of a superstition, okay? Probably something dating back to pre-Christian times, probably even Roman mining, where we leave offerings, okay? This is an offering to the earth, to Mother Earth, if you want to call it that to be cliche, okay? But this is an offering to the earth. You were a miner, you were within it, within the earth, within the body of the earth, and you had an attachment to this idea of this place being able to kill you very easily. So you left this piece of galena as an offering in the hope that later on she might give you a big 6 foot thick lead vein. You can see here there's something very nice that's coming up. These are some very early pit marks up here, these chisel marks, okay? Now we're going to come up here and I'm going to explain what this basically indicates, okay? But this is really nice. This dates from the level before.
Fantastic.
Okay? So we're going to go up here, I'll explain what that is. Just above us here, I've got something we're going to explain because this might look to the untrained eye like any other tunnel, okay? But this is something very special here, okay? Is everybody up, I think? Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I'm always wondering, oh God, I've spat my head. Right, so above us here, this looks narrower, doesn't it, at the top than down here? Much narrower at the top, doesn't it? Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Now this here is the original level that would have been driven in, probably 1700 bang on, they probably started work here. They might have started at about 1695 to 1700. Now this is before the common introduction of gunpowder to the commercial mining market. That comes in about 1740. So this means that they are still mining this out in this phase, the same as the Romans were mining, and the same as the medieval miners were mining, all by hand, completely hand cut by tools and chisels. There's no gunpowder used in this section at all. Well, it's very difficult to discern. It might have been powder assisted, but on the top it's certainly completely hand picked, and there's no shot holes. So it suggests to me that this is a very early 1700s pre-gunpowder level, okay? Now, it's called a coffin level, colloquially, okay, because this is the narrowest point at the top, and this tunnel would have been about half the width that it is now. So you would have been like this, okay? Your shoulders would have been touching the side of the wall, and your feet, you have to walk like that, okay? Just enough, maybe for a small wheelbarrow to get down. This is a very slow phase of mining. They're probably getting about 2 to 3 centimetres a day, okay? Now we can see something really nice here. Here's our first shot holes coming in, okay? So these are some 18th century shot holes that they've used to heighten the roof of the original level. Wow. Really nice ones, that. Yeah, and you can see these, yeah, they start going gunpowder mad in the 1740s and 50s. Now, if we want to look just beneath us here, we have a big hole that is unfortunately filled in, okay? This is what we call a winze, right? Originally went about 85 feet down, okay? It was sunk in 1779 to provide access for the miners down to lower levels, and also its secondary function was ventilation, the movement of air from this shaft down to a lower level, because lead mines, the veins are vertical, so we're going down in levels measured in fathoms, okay? So here we have a winze. Now, a winze is not a true shaft. A true shaft goes to the surface and it services all the mine levels. A winze is a shaft that communicates between 2 different levels of the mine. So we call it an internal shaft, a winze, okay? Now, this is very interesting because this is how the miners would have been travelling up and down levels. 85 feet in a bucket or a kibble made of wood, oak, okay? As is the windlass here, which is a very early form of crank windlass with no brake on it, okay? If he loses control, what are you going to do? You go flying down 60 feet and you're gone, okay? There is no brake. I don't know why they didn't think about that, but they didn't, okay? Probably put together very hastily by the miners themselves, by timbermen, men who specialised in building these pieces of equipment. Not very... As I said, you're spinning down here in a bucket in candlelight. Now, this candlelight's quite nice. This is the kind of candles they were using in the early 1800s when they came in, but these would have been very expensive to use because as I said, all equipment has to be bought from a company store in the middle of this village, and the candles are marked up at quite high prices. Okay, probably cost you a lot more than a candle would in Edinburgh, probably cost you a lot more than a candle would in Glasgow, okay, because of the delivery costs. So they avoid buying these and they make their own candles, tallow candles, made from mutton or beef fat. Some lovely hand-bent railways, okay, they've been bent on iron gear cranks, okay, and they had to be bent in accordance with the tunnel following the vein. You can see a lovely rail. We're going to see more railway along here as well, alright? Now we've got some bigger Victorian shot holes now. These are quite big, 1850s, 60s shot holes, these are bigger. This is a piece of graffiti, okay, and you might be able to see it maybe better if you see it than there.
Oh yeah.
Look at that, JW 1857 that. Wow. This mine closed in 1860. That is an 8, a 5 and a 7. Yeah. We don't know who W is. It could be Williamson, it could be Wilson, it could be one of the long line of miners who've worked in here since the 18th century. Okay, very tightly knit families, as I say. He's put his mark on his work. It's like the artist signing his work. He's driven this tunnel through. Somebody of significance has put this on the wall, and just up the road there, we've actually hit the lead vein. So I think this is a bit of a celebration. Yeah. A couple of smokes here and a beer. We'll put our name on the wall, and that's been done with his finger in the mud. It's not been done with a chisel, it's been done with his finger. Wow. So that's from 1857, a miner stood there and done that with his finger. Wow. And it's been preserved there on the wall, untouched in the mud.
Mining shaped every corner of life. Houses were built from spoil stone. Water was redirected into cisterns and wash pools. Education was highly valued. Wanlockhead even had Scotland's earliest subscription library, founded in 1741. The only one that was before that was the sister town of Leadhills. This was no ordinary village. Here miners read books on chemistry, engineering, politics, hungry for knowledge in a hard world.
So this is a house, a peasant's house, okay? This is the first type of dwelling that we have established here in the village, okay? Probably mortared walls on this because it's been built by the first leases of the mine, so this is actually very early mine housing, okay? Now, first of all, we have a wattle and daub floor. This says 1750, we're talking about 1680 to 1750. This is really no change in a house in the medieval period in Scotland from the 1500s, okay? Very basic. Now, as I said, first off, obviously we have a daub floor, straw and dirt on the floor there, okay? What this does is it poses particular problems towards furniture. Like that there, you can see that the furniture's legs have been cut down very slowly over time because it rots the actual legs of the chair. It gets wet in here, the moisture from outside makes the floor wet, so all your furniture rots very quickly. Therefore, it's not a tiny chair for a small child, it's a chair that's just been cut down more and more. People think it's to get close to the fire, it's just because you kept reusing your furniture. Okay. Now, the fire, as you can see, is a makeshift hearth in the middle of the floor. There's no chimney in this house. It's a heather roof made with local natural materials like pine, okay? So it's a pine heather roof, no chimney, okay? So we're very smoky in here, right? To combat that, there would be a shutter there and a slit in the window. There would be no window. Window tax, you're not getting windows here, okay? So imagine this closed, okay? Because it'd be very dark in here. Now, that peat doesn't burn at a very high heat, which means whatever's cooking on that fire is going to have to cook there all day, slowly. It would be a pot of noxious brew, okay? It would have lead, it would have arsenic, it would have meat that had a lead content, it would have vegetables that had a lead content, it would have water that had sewage in it being cooked on a fire. Because here there's no knowledge of bacteria or pasteurisation until Louis Pasteur comes in the 1800s and brings that in. So before that, we're drinking cholera from filled water. We're getting scurvy because the vegetables are spoiling. It's very hard to refrigerate anything up here. It's a difficult life, okay? This is the type of house you're starting to get in any industrial community. This is like a coal miner's house, okay? Any of these houses would have these features. Now, first of all, our mode of cooking food and our source of heat has changed massively. We now have our early form of aga, okay? Now, that is a very versatile form of fuel, form of heat, okay, because it uses multiple types of fuel. It uses peat, wood, and it can use coal as well. Yeah. When the steam engines come here, even though it's short-lived, there is coal coming up. So they're going to have access to that. If there's coal coming industrially, it's becoming commercially available to communities as well. That would stay on all day, and it would roast the house up nice and toasty. Houses, they say, are slated by this point. They're still thatched at this point. They might have been slate available. Certainly no miners would add slate on their house at this point in time. We've got a Hurley bed there, probably used for a guest or used for an older child if he made it past the age of 16, if he was lucky enough. You'd probably get that bed, okay? There's no outhouses, you just have a chamber pot, or a gazunder bed as they call it, right? So now we have more of what we call a house. Interiors are lime washed, more lights in here, we have windows in, and we have a flagstone floor to stop all this stuff from rotting.
A true hidden gem, the second oldest subscription library, the first being its sister town of Leadhills. But to be the second oldest in Britain is still a fantastic feat, and it's still open to this day.
The oldest is in Leadhills, our good old rival. Okay, 1741 in Leadhills, 1756 here, okay. This was founded originally by the Quakers, probably a form of reading society, and then it gradually took on its form as a subscription library, open once a month. You might think that I'm going to go into some wonderful explanation of this library and how wonderful it is. Well, I'm not. You're a miner, okay? You live in quite a dirty environment, work in quite a dirty environment, okay? Now, this library is open once a month, okay? You take a book out, you can take 4 small books or 1 big book, i.e. a folio, okay? Now, you take 4 books out and you're a miner, you come back in a month. How many of those books do you think are going to be damaged? I think a few probably, eh? Now, the longer you leave a miner with a book, the more damaged it's going to be. So a month's just perfect enough time to get a bit of money before the miner's even got into the library. Because he's going to come back with a dog-eared page, he might come back with a bit of candle wax on his book. Well, you've damaged the skin of the book, okay? These books are highly prized, so therefore we need to impose a fine and a charge. So before you've even returned the book, you're worrying about an overhead. On top of your overhead down there at the company store, on top of your overheads with all your gunpowder and things like that, you've now got an extra layer on top of the onion, as we call it. Now, that's already given you a fine. The price of fines on the books could vary. You're probably looking at about £5 for a fine of a book. Your average wage as a miner, okay, is thought to be about £20 a year. Okay, you're paid annually, bear in mind, so by the time all your money goes to the company store, it's spoken for. Okay, so you don't have much money leeway anyway. You certainly don't have enough money to start getting into debt because you don't have much in the beginning. So, there's a charge already. If you have a damaged book, you're looking at a big fine. It's going to take up a significant part of your wage. If you lose a book and it doesn't come back, the fine is immeasurable, okay? It's really, really bad. You're paying double the price of the book. Average price of a book at this time, probably about £10 to £20 for 1 book. So you're paying double that, you're looking at your yearly wage to double your yearly wage in debt. So is that really going to benefit you massively? No. But that's the buy-off because we're giving you an education. But make sure you do it in the right way, otherwise you're going to lose your feet, okay? And you kind of think, is that a deterrent, or was the education valued that much? And I think the education was valued that much, because you can see by 1914 the quality of the handwriting here. And you can hear from William Wordsworth and his sister themselves the quality of the Wanlock boys' Latin and Greek by 1803. They come on a tour up here. It's very common for landed gentry and members of the aristocracy or the philosophical enlightenment to come on tours and have a gander and ponder around the local communities, see how the industrialists were doing.
Take a ride on Britain's highest adhesion railway, originally built to transport ore. Today it offers stunning scenic views. A little fun fact for you that you may or may not know is the Scottish crown jewels from James V were actually, the gold for those crown jewels was collected in this area. They went through collecting all the Scottish gold and compiled it to make the crown jewels. But more recently, Elizabeth II helped reopen the Scottish Parliament, and with its birth they had a gold ring that signified the marriage of the two unions, and also gold plating on the actual mace, because it's solid Scottish silver that the mace is made from. So the gold that's used on the Scottish Parliament mace was also collected from this river stretch. As you can see, the gold pan is specially designed. How the gold pan works is it's got lots of ridges in the pan, and as you shake the gravel out, the heavy gold falls to the bottom, and the lighter black sand and gravel work their way out with the water current, and then you're left just with tiny little flakes of gold along the bottom. Here on the Mennick Pass, you apply for a licence either from the Clew Estates or from up at the Gold Panning Museum. They can give you a licence to be able to come panning here. When you do come panning, all you do is you take a bit of silt and what you need to do is make sure everything gets a chance to float down, and then what you're trying to do is float off most of the muck. If you're lucky enough to get the little flakes of gold in your pan, then you can take them out with a little suction tool and put them into a little sample type bottle with some water in it, and have your collection of gold. If you're coming here as a get rich quick project, forget it. It ain't going to happen. You have probably more chance of winning the lottery than you do of finding a gold nugget here. However, it did happen. It happened in 2015. We showed the nugget in the actual model of it anyway in the museum. So it does happen. And a friend of mine, Charlie Smart, he was panning on this piece of water, and he collected enough bits of gold by doing it regularly, collecting the tiny little bits, smelting it down, that he made his wife a ring. So Wanlockhead gold panning, this is how they've done it for centuries. The lead may be gone, but the legacy remains in this quiet valley of the Leadhills. It echoes a once vibrant industry still lingering in the stone cottages, the rustic tracks, and the resilient pride of the people who call this place home. Thanks for joining us as we unearth the story of Scotland's lead heartland. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share for more journeys into the past. So from Bonnet and Blade, me Grant, cameraman Jess, we'd like to say a massive thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.